and sub. We see you.
And welcome back to the SMITE Spring Masters Tournament. We are now moving into our final set of the day. We got to give a shout out to our friends over at Prime Gaming. Thank you so much, Prime Gaming, for being sponsor here in Season 9 of the SPL. If you have a Prime membership already, make sure that you are making the most of it by going in and getting all the exclusive content for the games that you're already playing. And if you saw any cool games in that little trailer there, make sure to pick up one of those of your own. If you're not already a Prime member, make sure that you do so you can catch up on all the great stuff that Prime membership offers to you. And then go ahead and link that Twitch account over with your Prime membership. That way you can make the most out of Prime Gaming. Thank you so much for being the sponsor in Season 9 of the SPL. I'm J-Mac. I got Charlie joining me on the desk as we get ready to go into our final set of the day and another elimination one. And this should be a very interesting one, to say the least, Charlie. Leviathans up against Titan, a very seasoned matchup so far this year.
Yeah, these teams have a lot of history facing each other, obviously. We saw that in the World Finals, and the Leviathans won. And then we saw it in the preseason tournament, and the Leviathans won. And then we saw it in the regular season, and the Leviathans won. So they've been doing quite well up against the Titans specifically. But besides that, they've had a bit of a fall. They were able to take on the Oni Warriors earlier on in this tournament. So the Leviathans have been looking pretty good. I think this meta does suit them pretty well. Obviously, they lost to the Camelot Kings, so that's why they're here, and that's why we're watching them.
Yeah, the Atlantis Leviathans have had a little bit of a rougher track. They did find a win against the Warriors, then the loss against the Kings puts them here now. Tartarus Titans have suffered their loss earlier on up against the Kings, who have already made their qualification through. And so now we get to see which of these two teams, is it going to be the 4th or the 6th seed team that are advancing themselves onward and finding themselves to another day of play. They'll be met by the teams that qualify in tomorrow's day of play. And this is a very important set for both these teams. I think for the Leviathans to really show us that they have stepped up, that they found a way back in this meta, and for the Titans to see if they can finally find a win over the Leviathans.
Yeah, it just seems like every time the Leviathans and the Titans play each other, the Leviathans always have their number, man. The Titans have always been looking so solid, and then the Leviathans just answer back with something. I think this meta does suit them both very well. Obviously, we just saw layers pop off on the Mercury, and we know that Pantom likes to play that Mercury as well. I imagine that'll be a contested pick between these two. Trying to get their junglers off to a nice start has to be the name of the game for both of these teams, but also you got to be keeping your eye on the dual lane as well. These ADCs can't go under the radar either.
I mean, if we want to talk about ADCs, it's been all over the board for the Tartarus Titans, whether that's in mid, the dual lane, the more native home of the ADCs, and then even the solo lane, where SOT's been able to break out a couple of those in that last set. We saw the Chernobog be a high priority pick when it came to the Tartarus Titans. Do you imagine, Trelly, for these two teams in this set, that Chernobog is going to maybe see equal priority?
Yeah, I think the Levi's are going to throw their attention more so towards the Jing Wei, but they might not want to deal with the global pressure of the Chernobog, so banning that away so they don't have to take it themselves could certainly be an option. The Titans, they've obviously shown that there's a few different picks right now that they want to put a lot of stock into and try and get a hold. And I think the Leviathans have been watching. Obviously, they'll be doing their own homework themselves. So depending on what they want to do in this matchup, I think, yes, it will be a contested pick, or at least trying to just take away from him.
I think Baron is another one to keep your eyes on. Obviously, this entire tournament, Baron has been showing a lot of success. But in that last game in particular, SOT, just doing Baron things when it came down to these mid-late game team fights, wrapping up anybody that he could, pulling him into the coffin, and forcing multiple forms of mobility, multiple purification beads on people. And unfortunately for Neil, he was more often the receiver being pulled into the coffin because all of his other teammates had to use so much to get out.
Yeah, that's true. But he also is not that safe in lane. If you are going to be using your ult trying to get beads down, you're also leaving yourself susceptible to the gank. So again, these junglers have to be able to see where those weaknesses are on the map, and I think both of them are able to farm this meta pretty well. There's a lot of differently contestable picks that you could be looking at right now. We've already touched on the Mercury, the Bakasura. We've seen a few times. There's just, the quick farm game. That's what we want to be looking at here. Obviously, everyone knows right now the ADC picks are going to be looked at, but the quick farm, I really think this will be one of those matchups where the junglers, whichever one gets off to a better start, is going to be able to help their team out so much in this game.
I mean, how do you feel about the Dodgy in this case when we saw heavy priority towards that god in the previous game and that previous set? And these are two teams with two junglers that really do love this match. You think maybe if this Mercury gets banned away, this Dodgy could be the next one up on the table for them to grab.
Yeah, I don't think Dodgy is going to be a first pick. It certainly could be given, what you leave open. Say, hey, we're going to leave open characters that, get beaten by Daji, so we can let that open just in case we want to first pick it. But I do think it will be a good answer back. You know, hey, you grab the Jingwei, for example, we'll be able to grab Daji. We have the knockup immunity, that sort of thing. There's all sorts of counter matchups that you can look at in a matchup like this. But I definitely think it'll be on the table. You know, at least on the radar, someone's gonna have to be keeping out for, hey, let's not pick too many characters that can get pulled by the Daji, that sort of thing.
We haven't been seeing too many crazy things when it comes down to, you know, the support role as of recent. Geb, Khepri have kind of been like the two for today. We saw the Kumakarn in the last set, and that's one that really brings a lot of value just because of the nature of that mez. I may be a little surprised that we haven't seen as much Kumba with how valuable he's been, and kind of that same degree Geb. When you get Spectral plus Geb passive, these crits are basically doing nothing more than a normal auto attack to these supports.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Both of these support players, I mean, for example, the Atlas, I think both of these support players look at that Atlas. I mean, I should say. We haven't been seeing the Atlas, and I think that's where I was going with this. The Atlas and the Yemoja, for example, two picks that you'd expect to be pretty highly contested, but given the meta shifts, haven't seen too much of recently. It's more so just, as you mentioned, the Gebs, the Khepri, these sort of things that can be, these tanks that can just sit there and be solo tanks that just blink in for the engagement, sure, but also stay back and just peel, have those cleanses, the CC, and death immunity. Those sort of things are going to be pretty highly contested here. Get your carries and then just protect them. I believe Roe calls it the protect the president comps. Those are going to be pretty strong right now.
We'll see if we get any of those kind of protect the president compositions. Game number 1, picks and bans between the Atlantis Leviathans and the Tartarus Titans. Up until from Worlds onward, the Leviathans have been finding nothing but success up against the Titans team. Can the Titans finally pull out a set win up against them? Well, that will have to come down to this set. First ban and first pick do go to the Leviathans, and they're taking a little while to figure out exactly what they want to take away here, Trelly.
Yeah, they have to put themselves in a favorable position where they say, hey, we're going to ban away this Mercury. We don't want it. I imagine we've seen their strat thus far. It's got to be to get Zapman on the Jingwei. That's usually what they go for, so they have to ban accordingly. Yemoja actually will be taken away here. As I mentioned, I mean, I did mention that it hasn't been looked at, but it is still a pick that Rongu looks really solid on, obviously, and something that Aurora probably wouldn't have minded playing, but given the fact that they're not first pick, probably just okay with giving that one away. Leviathans usually are drafting that to try and get Zap on something safe like Jingwei that has that crit chance, anything that can really hard carry late game, and they're going to be banning around that way. Now, I'm going to see if the Titans recognize that and say, hey, we're going to ban that away, or if they'll say, you know what, we'll give it to you. Chernobog, though, will be taken away as well by the Leviathans. We already mentioned it might be looked at here just because of how well the Tartarus Titans have been playing it, not only just in the solo lane, but the global presence, just too annoying to try and deal with.
What a phrase to say that we're talking about Chernobog as a solo lane pick for teams, and one that would need to be banned away at the very least. But Mercury, Chernobog, and Ymir, Yemoja going to be the bans on the side of the Titans. So really trying to put a focus and an emphasis on Rongyu's God picks out here. But Jingwei still notably available. Ullr going to be taken out. So at the moment, of the top picks that are remaining just coming out of maybe say the last set, Jingwei is still up, Baron is still up, and Daji as well. So I imagine Leviathans can take their pick of which one of those they want to get, and the Titans should be happy to take two of those, but it will be Jingwei banned away by the Titans, and that gives Leviathans quite a few options.
Yeah, they do. I mean, if they want to go with like something like the Baka, for example, trying to get Phantom on some early farm, that could be an option. But I don't think you pick your ADC right now. There's nothing that screams that you have to get it right away. Obviously, Rama usually gets looked at, but AMC is actually going to be the choice here. Not wanting Paul to be on that. Obviously, this is more often than not an AMC mid. Wanting to get that pressure for themselves, just hand that over to Shinto. Say, hey, we're pretty much guaranteeing you lane pressure with this pick. And you don't have to be a little safe. You have to be a little bit far back for a bit, but after you get that, you're just able to full clear the wave pretty effectively.
Now the option goes back to the Titans. If SOT wants, he can pick himself up that Baron Somni that is open. Same with the Daji if we do want to see Layers get something a little bit aggressive, but instead, grabbing a shot on the support right away. Khepri going to be picked up for the Titans, and this is a pick that Aurora specifically has had a lot of success on in the past. I believe Season 8, kind of towards that tail end, he was sitting somewhere around 70-75% win rate on that God. Wasn't allowed to play very much of it through Phase 1, but now gets an opportunity to couple that with a Nemesis for the Titans.
Yeah, that will be a solid answer for the Titans, and I think the Leviathans can answer back with the Geb if they do want to. It's got a pretty solid matchup into Khepri. It can break the Nemesis shield, just cleanse the Abduct if need be, but the question is, does Rongu want to sit back and play that more Peel style, or does he want to be an initiator? Of course, Geb can do both with the Blink Cataclysm, but there are other picks that just do it better. Bakasura, though, I did mention was on the table, and it will be taken away pretty quickly here. It's going to have a decent matchup into Khepri specifically, but you don't want to target one character and then just get the Scarab Blessing down. You want to sort of split your DPS a little bit. It will be a second Hunter locked in, Hachiman, so Zapman will have a pretty safe pick in that duo lane with the Cavalry Charge. You're able to just escape whenever you need to. It's not going to be the biggest deal.
Olorun probably for Paul back in that mid lane. And Charlie, let me pick your brain a little bit here, because we've been seeing a lot of the same support so far during this tournament. You know, the Gebs, the Kumakarns, Khepris, those natures, some Sylvanas and Terrors thrown amongst the mix there. But a couple that we haven't really seen much of, and something that really the Leviathans and the Bolts are teams that love to run. ESET and Nox have been largely absent. Do you think that there might be any priority towards grabbing one of those ones up for the Leviathan support?
I don't think so. I just think, I mean, we saw a Nox hover, and that was the most that we really did see, and it doesn't look like the Titans are going to ban away Xing Chen or anything like that. The Leviathans also aren't going to. I think that could be a notable pick, but right now I think mages in the support role are just a little bit too squishy with how many ADCs are getting crit online so quickly. I don't think you're able to get to the late game where these mages actually can be a little bit tankier with the itemization you can go, but that's a Xbalanque that just got locked in for the Tartarus Titans. Obviously, we see Paul is going to be on the Olorun mid, so that's going to be Cyclone Spin on the X-Ball. He's the only one really who has tried playing it this season, and looks like he's going to go back to it.
Yeah, Xbalanque kind of bounces in and out of the meta for like a couple of weeks at a time. You know, he gets a nice little buff to himself, and all of a sudden everybody wants to play him, and then he gets one tiny nerf or, you know, one change up in items, and all of a sudden nobody wants to play him. I mean, how do you feel about Xbalanque with this composition? I mean, you've already got Sanctified Field. That's annoying. Now you've got this global blind with this Hunter.
Yeah, with the buff to Rising Jaguar, I think X-Ball is kind of slept on right now. He does have a fair bit of damage, and he's up against the Bologna. That's going to be a little bit difficult to deal with. There's a lot of ways for the Leviathans to just say, we don't really care about your auto attack damage here. With the Bakasura be crippling out all of these dashes except for Olorun. And then you're looking at Bologna, who just gets to the backline. But I do think that the ultimate is really what you're picking this Xbalanque for. You can help your team really wherever you are on the map. Just turn off the lights for them. Usually when you're listening to comms with something like this, it's usually like, hey, let's go in here. Oh, guys, I can't see. We got to back up. We got to back up. You have to retreat. You can't just go in blind and assume you're hitting everything. So usually when that Xbalanque ult comes in, that's where you're going to see the disengage. I think that it's going to be all on Cyclone how he wants to use this ult and when he wants to use it to be really effective on this pick.
Sobek and Bologna were those hovers, as you were talking about, with the Leviathan. Sobek going over the support role, something we don't see as often anymore, typically more reserved for the solo lane over anything else, but players like Trix Tank over on the EU SCC scene really do still like to go with this pick, and it does give you something aggressive and some kind of initiation to kind of couple with this Bologna, maybe bounce back and forth there. Well, the King Arthur hovered. Charlie, this would give us a warrior v warrior solo lane, and as I say that, how could we forget the fact that Kleena is a god that exists, hasn't been banned, and instead gets 10th picked?
I mean, we forget because it's SOT. You never see this man pick Kleena. You're like, all right, what Hunter is he going to go here? Is he going to go find out if, you know, like maybe unban Baron and pick that? Something like that. Either way, Kleena always going to be a solid option in that solo lane. We saw Paul go Kleena in the mid lane, but it surely can't be the solo run. I have to imagine this is Paul back on that all run. He had such a good game on it previously, and Kleena just slots so well into that solo lane.
I don't know, man. Like, I don't know with this Titans team. It's almost feeling like I'm watching a Jade Dragon style draft because you just don't know where everything is going to fall in place. But Kleena, maybe more expected to go towards the solo lane when you've already got Olorun Xbalanque. I mean, we said that previously, and then we saw two Hunters go over there. So the Titans keeping a little bit of ambiguity with their draft. Probably the only ones that are locked in place is going to be the Xbalanque, Nem, and the Khepri. So maybe just our eyes kind of gazing back and forth between them. But when it comes down to the team fight stage out of here, is there either draft here, Charlie, for that kind of has your advantage in your mind?
I mean, right now the Leviathans do have a lot of single target damage, so maybe if they're just throwing everything into a pluck and then it just gets Scarab's Blessing, that could be a little bit annoying to deal with. The Titans are going to have to position a Roar very effectively and not have him get CC chained. If he does, he might ult the wrong target, might not be able to get the ult off in general, and then the Leviathans just win out. You have to be using the Scarab's Blessing effectively, and if you do, I think the Titans might have a slight edge, but the Levi's just have really everything they want. Once I saw Pantom get on this Baka, it's going to be hard for the Titans to match that early pressure.
Yeah, Leviathan's going with a lot of auto attack focus in their build. AMC, Baka, and Hachiman. Then you throw a Bologna in the mix, and Charlie, it feels like this is a composition that really wants to shine around those objectives. Do you think that the Titans have an answer to this objective composition style that the Leviathans have drafted out here?
Oh yeah, sanctified fields, turn off the lights. What do they do now? You're in slow motion in the dark. That's
the worst combination.
That's what I'm saying. So they have answers. It's just can you bait out these ultimates? Can you just shred the objective before anyone gets there in time? There's a few different avenues for outplay here, but again, I do like what the Leviathans have done with their draft. I think getting Panatom onto this early style jungle in Baka, get a Golden Blade online, just run to farm as quickly as possible. That's probably what we're expecting to see here.
Yeah, I'm going to be keeping a lot of eyes on this Bakasura. It's a god that more often than not, up until this tournament, is one that you want to shine in the early game, and then once it gets to the late game, you kind of hope that you can stay alive long enough to go through some of these hunters, to get through some of these team fights. Do you think that this is a draft that around this Bakasura that can really make him work late? We don't even have to give you the chance to ask that, because instead, we're going to throw it over to game number 1, Leviathans and Titans, right now.
That's right. It's a Worlds Finals rematch here in week number 2 of Masters. One of these teams is going home, the other one moving on to Saturday's day of play. Of course, awaiting their opponents from tomorrow, Mifflin. We'll get to find out a little bit more about that, but first they got to make it through this. And this is 2 difficult teams to take down for either squad. Levi's backs against the wall, stumbling a little bit earlier versus the Kings. Titans also stumbling versus the Kings. So they have similar paths trying to get here, except the Titans just had maybe the best warm-up you could have for a best of 3, which is 3 games in a row.
Yeah, but then you got to talk about endurance and whether or not that's going to be a conversation for the Tartarus Titans. I mean, these guys, every single one of them, historied players that have got long, storied, competitive careers, no strangers to longer sets or longer days, but it's difficult to go from one best of 3 immediately into another one, especially considering how long some of those games were. Didn't have a whole lot of time to prep for this set, whereas the Leviathans had plenty of time to prep. It could be difficult for the old Titans.
And you got to think about it. It feels a little mean to say it, but like the Titans have played more games today than they did in the World's Finals against the Leviathans, right? Like, I mean, it took them a lot quicker for the Leviathans there, and it felt like that throughout Phase 1 as well. The Titans seemed to be a very strong powerhouse, except for when they went against the Leviathans. For some reason, the Leviathans came in 2-0'd them and made it look relatively simple. Otherwise, the Titans have been very stalwart, and it feels like I don't know what to expect out of this one, right? Some meta shifts, some very targeted bans during that P&B segment. And it feels like the Titans have got a good grip on what they want to do now.
Yeah, good grip on what they want to do, but the Leviathans have historically had that exact same grip on what the Tartarus Titans want to do. So we'll see if that is a 9-5 resistant strategy. The Leviathans still have the Tartarus Titans number, but I think the devs do a very good job of highlighting which point of the game where each one of these compositions is going to look best. When you're talking about the Leviathans, early game pressure, I think, especially around Panatom, whereas the Tartarus Titans in some of these late game team fights have some pretty disgusting combos, namely between their 2 hunters, one magical, one physical, Olarun and Shibalanke, being able to turn off the lights and slow down time.
Yeah.
Not exactly an ideal situation for any singular member of the Leviathans to find themselves in. I am curious, though, about when Panatom is going to decide to get aggressive. If it's a 1v1 up against Nemesis, Bakasura will almost never win that. But otherwise, I think Bakasura just has really good matchups against just about everybody else on the Tartarus Titans.
I can hear the Leviathans cheerleaders that don't exist now doing the be aggressive, right? Trying to get them out, amp them up, try and get them out there. Here's a question for you, though. Unfortunately, not to do with Panatom. That would have been a great segue
Would have been
otherwise.
nice.
Unfortunately, it's a guy sitting just above him in the charts down at the bottom. No starter item for hardcore. How do you feel about that in solo lane? I'll admit, like, it kind of catches me off guard.
Yeah, we've seen this a couple of times from Bologna. I think that generally Bologna goes like one of 2 ways with their starter items. It's either going to be Death Toll for all that sustain in lane thanks to the bludgeon AoE auto attacks, or you're going for Tainted Steel. But if you don't feel like you're going to get too pressured in lane, you can get away with just foregoing Death Toll. Scourge should be able to make up some of that healing as you level that up a fair bit. Golden Blade going to help you out a lot more. So now you don't have to put any points into Bludgeon except for the first for your core. Completely max out Scourge, and you're not sacrificing AoE cleave damage. And you're also just getting a lot more sustain. So I think it's an interesting start. But I would be surprised if we see our core not go for any starter item whatsoever.
It feels
maybe like a
Bumbus? Yeah, it gives him that option like late game, right? To be able to change things up. Aurora's taking a lot of damage in the dual lane, almost enough to burst it down, but the Leviathans just a little short. Maybe it's a dash away from potentially being killed off there. But luckily there for Aurora, he gets on out of there. Is the Golden Blade, though, for Hardcore on the other side. So you had highlighted it. I'm just excited to watch how this is going to work out. More so in the build in the long run, where he's going to go with this if he does pick up a starter later on. Maybe not even second item, but more specifically as something to upgrade for some of those late game team fights. That'll be just a fun combination to unlock for him. Meanwhile, other side, most things seem pretty much standard for what we've seen so far today. The Golden Blade's online for the junglers as well. Do you think that this is going to help? Because the stats on it, pretty good.
They're straight up good.
Layers and Panatom should theoretically be able to get pretty aggressive with this early on.
Yeah, I think Golden Blade's got specifically some pretty interesting interactions for Layers. Anytime he's lined up against Panatom, Regurgitate doesn't work. I don't care what minions you're spawning up. If Layers lands
more
one auto,
bodies.
yeah, one auto on any of those minions, and all of them die immediately, which is something we've seen a couple of times so far this week. Generally, Nemesis has been the answer to Bakasura for that reason exactly. Also, Bakasura just has no way to deal with the Nemesis shield in a 1v1. But you got to talk about the stats, and 10% movement speed's really the whole conversation.
All right, now Aurora locked up against the walls. Look at these body blocks. Regurgitate working out here, but is it working well enough? Sanctified Fields dropped in retaliation, and the Titans save their support and manage to get out alive.
Man, I can't believe Aurora lives as long as he does there. I mean, the rotation in from Paul with Sanctified Fields. We got to see the Golden Blade and how that interacts with Regurgitate. Takes 2 auto attacks, but he's only 1 item into his build. Nemesis eventually will have an easier time dealing with some of those thrown-up minions.
Yeah.
It's hard to come up with interesting ways to
To describe it like
regurgitated minions. Yeah, it's not my favorite thing on the planet, but the Tartarus Titans, I'm sure, happy with that interaction, that early sovereignty pickup for Aurora, paying for itself in dividends already.
Now they're getting maybe aggressive themselves. I'm kind of surprised to see Layers chasing him down. Maybe I shouldn't be, knowing the ult is away. You've got a pretty good advantage over Panatom. They're going to back off there. Aurora has just been under the eyes of the Leviathans. I mean, even there in mid, I saw him running away from 3 bodies that were looking at him. And with how long he just lived, being able to escape narrowly in the dual lane, barely escaping there thanks to his team around him and a good shell. Now most of that is missing. You'd have to imagine one good pluck, one misstep from Aurora could result in a kill, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be happening anytime soon.
Well, here's the thing. Sure, you got rid of his shell, but like now he's just got Scarab's Blessing. You got 2 lives you got to work through.
Point.
Going to be pretty difficult to shut down Aurora, which is why I think we saw the Leviathans try so hard while Aurora was still level 4, because they know it's not going to get easier once Khepri gets that ultimate available, and he's got it now. Especially with how tanky he's gone early on. Aurora, that is, Sovereignty could potentially transition into the Thieves if he so chooses, or even just go straight into a Heart Ward, or even potentially some CDR. Aurora's got the field ahead of him. I mean, he could do no wrong with his build, truthfully.
And that's, well, maybe I'll have to hold that thought. Paul, beads forced out. There's a good pullback from Aurora. The damage seems to be on him, but there's not going to be enough lockdown from the Leviathans in order to find themselves the kill. But going back to Aurora, and that might be a perfect example of it, Paul benefiting right now from the sovereignty as well. It's a lot of physical on the side of the Leviathans. Outside of Wrong You, it's all physical. So do you think that he's going to be able to forego more of the mainstay magical items, right? He could still pick up things like the Spirit Robe and maybe have some secondaries on there, but doesn't that make it maybe even easier for him to just survive throughout this early game?
Oh, for sure, yeah. I mean, having one magical source of damage and it being Sobek, never exactly ideal.
Layers chasing down Panatom. There's the Regurgitate and Retaliation. And we're going to get to see now a few of the autos that get thrown back. It's going to be ult for ult. Ultimately, nothing that comes out of it in terms of kills. Wrong You! Woo. Playing it close to call, but gets the dash just in time. And they're playing this close. Mifflin, it felt like about 5 different scenarios so far, I would say, that have almost resulted in a first blood, but not quite.
Yeah, not quite, not just yet. But I think you bring up a great point about Aurora's build and maybe the builds of everybody else. SOT might not be the tankiest god on the planet playing Kleena, but if you could just dedicate 2 physical defense items and essentially ignore magic defense in general, you could still be a high damage output Kleena that is relatively survivable. So I think the longer this game goes for the Leviathans, the more difficult it is to execute on their draft. But that's not to say that the Leviathans haven't got some decent answers to a physical defense stack from the Tartarus Titans. You've got Defense Shred from Shinto, Stinger Ultimate, phenomenal. True Damage from Panatom. Doesn't matter how much defense you build, it's called True for a reason. And then kin size is just going to work regardless of how much defense you've got. Kin size, pretty good on a lot of the gods on the Leviathans.
Yeah, it just feels like a good item. Something, I mean, it's been a while, I want to say, since I've seen Bologna with like the standard, well, in a professional match, Bologna with like a full attack speed-esque build that you used to see on Hunters, but it used to happen a lot, and she works with it really well. Chin size can slot into that, but even if you ignore that, there's 3 other physical attackers that can use it pretty well. So it's going to be fun to watch if the Leviathans, I guess just how they explore their builds. Toxic Blade already online for Hardcore, so getting rid of a little bit of the healing helps deal right now specifically with Solar Troll. And it brings the conversation, I think, down to where you were talking about it. You had mentioned Solar Troll. Kleena, not necessarily the tankiest, can build 1 or 2 physical items, or physical protection items, and be pretty well off. It's not common that we've seen it for Oleron, but Paul himself, as a player, typically likes to slot in like a breastplate or something.
Yeah, he loves it.
And so, you know, just one of those, it feels like that, plus a Sanctified Fields, and you start getting beads, and a few levels he's got Aegis. That becomes a very terrifying and hard-to-kill Oleron.
Yeah, the longer this game goes, I'm talking myself into it. The Tartarus Titans just like already have really strong scaling looking at their composition, but you gotta think this Leviathans draft is going to start falling off, which means you want the Leviathans pushing a lead. You want them setting up aggression across the map. And so far, the Leviathans have done a good job of controlling neutral farm, getting on top of these greater Scorpions, and they have net themselves a slight lead. But this game could very well just be on a straight-up timer. Like, Gold Furies and Pyromancers need to very quickly become the topic of conversation for the Leviathans so they can start getting some of this itemization that ignores physical defense, the kin size, maybe an Executioner pickup, which could be what Panatom is looking towards in that second slot, which will help out the rest of the team a fair bit. Stinger always going to be good because of that defense shred, but I am concerned, and maybe wrong you will have to look a little bit more so towards either straight-up bruiser items or maybe even a dedicated damage item. Sobek with Soul Reaver is not something that is unheard of, and it might even be necessary looking at the rest of this draft.
And you get a little bit of burst, and you go in with that ult. That pop could actually end up setting up a lot of cool kills for your team. And like you said, maybe necessary after a certain point. I'm going to keep an eye on the builds. Chin size picked up now for Panatom. You get the Brawlers already for Shinto and a Wind Demon. So 3 completely different items across these gods. And I think that makes it fun to watch where it goes in. And you have to think that, admittedly, Paul brings this alongside the Titans, but you see 2 Hunters, and admittedly, I think doing it a little bit better than an Oleron or any of the other, maybe Sans except for Soul. They're going to be able to shred objectives, it feels like, a little bit better. Towers, Fire Giants, Gold Furies. But like you said, that's just a matter of time, right? In like 20 minutes, Paul's not going to hit just as hard anyway, so you have to figure out when you're going to be able to do so. And unfortunately, as we just saw in the solo lane, aggression isn't really working out the way the Leviathans would like.
No, the Leviathans aren't going to get much rolling up against SOT, who is essentially called the bluff of the Leviathans, saying, hey, you might have a pretty aggressive build on your Bologna, but nobody's going to rotate over, and even if they do, they can't kill me. So double stack for SOT. Soul Eater immediately into the Transcendence, and now finally looking towards some defense in the 3rd slot, likely Breastplate of Valor, to help out with some of that CDR. And as you were saying, Paul is going to shred objectives, and it's going to come sooner rather than later. Double ring start Telkines in the 2nd slot. I think the Tartarus Titans could very easily just remove objectives with 5-6 seconds left alone, as long as Paul plus Cyclone Spin is on it.
Well, there's a pluck onto a Roar. And a good knock-up interrupts the dash. There's going to be the slowdown. Sanctified Fields help peel. The CC immunity from Wrong U keeps him moving at speed, but unfortunately for them, that's a huge stop from the Titans. No kills just yet for either squad, but it is starting to count up in terms of the gold. The Pyromancer earlier went in favor of the Leviathans, so sitting at 1,300, and it looks like they're making a feint towards the Gold Fury. No answer right now from the Titans, so this should push them up to that 2K mark. Cyclone Spin should be too late here and will be just in time to watch it fall down and despawn.
So the Leviathan's able to desync neutral objectives, should be able to juggle Pyromancer and the Furies very easily, and keep the Tartarus Titans on the back foot. The Leviathans now have to keep up this aggression.
Now, I mean, on to Paul, no mana, this is free, but you gotta be careful. And they manage to slow it down, but no, the tick damage pulls him right back into the waiting arms of Panatom. finds that first blood and is looking for a little more leap onto Aurora and finds the kill. It's a double for the jungler. The tower will take him down and turn it around for Layers. Now SOT, with a huge rotation, could look for more.
Shinto and Yarkor on the retreat. Shinto may have stuck around a little too long, but Zapman turns the corner.
What a huge silence from Hardcore. Slows Layers down, turns it around, and stops the Titans in their tracks. Only 1 kill retaliation. And admittedly, the tower got it, not even Layers. But it's a 2-for-1 with first blood in favor of Panatom.
I gotta gas up Rongyu, though. He makes possibly one of the smartest plays you could make in that situation. Instead of committing onto the kill on a Paul, and Olaran, who's sitting in the middle of the team fight, or middle of the lane even at that, he says, okay, well, it's probably going to be a Scarab's Blessing. Well, let's just make sure Aurora can't get further away. So he plucks back in the Khepri, realizing that none of his teammates are going to help him out. But Paul is revived by Khepri and has dropped into the middle of the team fight. So now Rongyu, in focusing one person separately from the rest of his team, creates a scenario where the Leviathans could chase out and pick up both kills. Just great recognition of the scenario and great wherewithal to make that play. Rongyu proving why he's a world champion.
And just showcasing one of the reasons that he's in the conversation for the best support in the league. Maybe
he's
some
so
people
good.
have even, I think, worded best support ever. We'll have to see, I guess, how long his
I can't
career
speak to
goes
that.
and where it goes, right? He's got the 1 championship now, which is pretty damn good, honestly. We'll see if he can match what Neil has 2. Any other supports? Raffer has 2.
Raffer's got
so
a
there's
couple,
a few that you have to catch up to, but he's been putting a good mark on the game. And now it's going to be a very interesting 15-minute mark. Pyromancer's about to respawn. Last time goes the way of the Leviathans. They just got themselves the Gold Fury, plus those kills and the first blood in their favor. It's amassed them a little over 2,000 gold. Starting to push towards the 2,500 mark, so it's feeling like something a little more substantial than really we've gotten to see in most of the games today. But is it something, I mean, at 15 minutes with the length that these games have been going to the, the later 20s, is it enough right now that you can really feel like you have an advantage?
Look, and that's a great question because I've got no confidence right now in the Leviathans until this next wave of objectives.
Yeah.
I think that this next Pyromancer into Gold Fury, even potentially Fire Giant, if the Leviathans are able to take a team fight, that's where you're really making your money for this team. That is really what you need to set up because the Tartarus Titans are still scaling and they're not so far behind that the Leviathans can just walk up and pull Pyromancer. Clearly, they tried to. They postured the right side and lose out a good bit of HP, especially on Shinto.
Yeah, they're having to play carefully. Hardcore seems to be the target here, and the slow is there from Layers. The blind is good from Cyclone, and they can't quite get the kill. Panatom regurgitate, just create some bodies to create some space, and they save that, but they might lose the Pyro for it. 2 people already gone. Zap's on the other side of the planet. It's just Rongyu, and good zoning right now that is going to slow things down. Got the Sobek still standing here, still hanging out, walking forward, plucked in. This might actually help him out. No, the Titans get the Pyromancer, and now Rongyu is surrounded, goes into the waters, but it's not getting him out of here this time.
Yeah, you could see how badly the Leviathans want to make that play. They want to keep up their aggression, but in trading out Rongyu could be the Fire Giant.
It started up. There's no way. Yeah, they don't hold it at 16 minutes right now. Absolutely insane. Remember, Fire, along with pretty much everything on the map, did get buffed, so it's a little harder to kill. 18 minutes was like that magic number for the SPL for the long time. I have a feeling that's going to end up
25.
shifting. Yeah, it's not going to be the same anymore. We'll have to relearn when it is the easiest to try and take down. But a 17-minute FG would have been nuts for the Titans. Luckily for the Leviathans, they don't live in that world right now, so they can continue farming.
Yeah, but the Leviathans, the time's ticking onward. That clock keeps moving. And the
As it does
Leviathans
for us all.
are not favored in the late game. I'm going to not mince words here. The Tartarus Titans composition is only going to continually get stronger and stronger. Now we're starting to look at a little bit more physical defense picked up. You're picking up 3rd defense item for Aurora. Surprised to see SOT go down the shield tree, maybe like a runic shield or even potentially an Anchile to help out Anchile again. Just one of my favorite items that I think is slept on, just having a silence in the middle of a
really
team
fun to
fight,
say.
or having 50 power and some CDR.
I like
could
those
go a
things
long
you
way.
just said. Maybe
Yeah,
I think I'm now supporting this
good.
item wholeheartedly.
It's so good. I think it's just that it's not the most magical defense, and also the passive a little bit conditional in some of these engagements might be what dissuades some of these players from going towards it. But I am concerned now for the Leviathans and surprised at some of the build pass. I had expected full-heartedly at least one Executioner by now to help out with some of that team-wide defense shred, but instead, Panatom Kinsai's in second slot, immediately into the Toxic Blade, worried about some of the sustain that the Tartarus Titans have got. Lifesteal from auto attacks. Paul is actually playing a healer like Paul is beknownst to do. Oleron Seal pretty significant in some of these late-game team fights that go long, as well as SOT with the Soul Eater. So Toxic Blade will find value, and it is just a straight-up good stat stick for some of these auto attackers. But Executioner needs to come soon.
Ooh, a roar plucked in and burned down. Scarab's Blessing. Whether it's the movement speed or the revive, it's going to be enough to get him out of there for now. Hardcore doesn't seem to be able to chase it down. A heavy investment from the Leviathans, and they're going to try to follow up. Oni Fury picked up and burned down quickly. Cyclone turns off the lights, and they move forward. Oni Fury leashed by the Levi's for now, and there's just enough of a presence from the Titans so they don't feel comfortable. They're going to start it back up, and it is bouncing between life and death on a pin, and the Leviathan's able to pick that one up, and now they're looking for a little bit more. Sot barely gets into the wall there. It's going to come out, seems safe for now, but Panatom's going to be chasing him down. Instead, it's Cyclone Spin with the first kill. Hardcore goes down, and now the Leviathans are getting turned on.
Cyclone Spin still healthy, no mana, but doesn't need it to shoot out those autos. SOT removes Panatom from the map. The Leviathans may have taken the objective, but at a heavy commitment, the Tartarus Titans were allowed to reset their support, regroup, and get ready for the fight. 30 seconds of the grayscale for both Soul Laner and Jungler for the reigning world champions, which means that 18-minute mark might just be 20. The Tartarus Titans got eyes for the Fire Giant, and we've seen their shred on these objectives. Paul's critting, Cyclone Spin's critting, and they'll both make short work of the Fire Giant.
I mean, we were talking about it the entire time as well. FG started out by the Titans. Now we'll get to see their burn. But you also get to see, I want to say, the lack thereof from the Leviathans. Onto the objective, the Gold Fury, yeah, they killed it real dead, real good. But onto the actual players, not so much. And you got to think about it. You got the Witchblade to slow down some of the attack speed. You got 2 shells on the side of the Titans. Now you've got a Fire Giant buff around your belts. It feels like they're in a good spot. That's completely glossing over the Spectral. It's glossing over the healing that you said comes from the Oleron. Luckily for the Leviathans, they get something in retaliation. With that Oni minion wave that was pushed up, they get both towers over here and left. Unfortunately for them, it might cost Zap his life. It's going to cost him his Aegis at the minimum. And this feels like it might be the epitome of a Zapman Aegis, unless this ult gets him just far away, and he's out of there for right now. Solar Troll continuing the chase. Wrong you, doing his best to peel. And I can't believe it, Zap lives.
He is a world champion, all right? We don't have Zapman Aegises anymore. Great play to maintain his life. Maybe not so much a great play in that he lost his ultimate and his Aegis going into a base defense situation against a composition of the Tartarus Titans that is just going to make short work of these towers, but better to have had a Zapman, I suppose. It would be much easier for the Tartarus Titans to siege had they been able to find that pick. And even now, the Leviathans, in showing presence with 4, have slowed down and even halted the siege of the Tartarus Titans. But just wait, once they're 5 stacked, or once we're able to see layers work their way into this tier 1 tower in mid that could open up the door, it's a long play. There's the Trebuchet in the way, but 2.5 minutes with Fire Giant, I think they'll be able to make work of that, and then start to rotate over.
Yeah, the Trebuchet did not last long in the eyes of the Titans. It did push them back slightly, give the Leviathans more of a grouping under their tier 2. Now this is where part of the game was changed, Mifflin. Having tankier tier 2s, not just tankier, but they hit harder as well. It's a little more difficult to just run up under and siege even here. 22 minutes and 9-4, this tier 2 is worthless, and you're sitting under your Phoenix the entire time. Right now, I like seeing what we're seeing from the Leviathans. Will it be worth it? Seems to be the question. They're getting good damage. Zapman hitting pretty hard at this point. And it's going to be enough to keep the Titans at bay.
Man, Shinto's honey is just so disruptive in some of these team fights. It's really just the honey that creates the scenario where Zapman can sink some auto attacks, where they can put some damage into the Tartarus Titans. And of the 3 minutes that we just discussed that they had with Fire Giant buff, 1 has been expended, just trying to take out a tier 1 in mid, just trying to win out this poke war. Panatom dropped to 50%. Tier 1 will eventually fall. The Tartarus Titans should be able to keep up this siege.
Now trying to mount up defenses. Tier 2s galore right now for the Leviathans. Aurora looking to pincer, potentially lock down Zap. Forced to go to a different route. It's been trading autos back and forth, and you can see how much they are hitting for between these 2 hunters. Tier 2 tower on left, only half health. The other two for the Leviathans, still max health. That's going to change pretty soon as they start to mount an assault on the mid Tier 2.
They got it.
Yeah, they've got plenty of damage here. Hardcore's in the jungle. And I was wondering if they were going to look for more of a fight, but instead, it's just watch the tower, slow it down. I mean, at this point, we have to talk about the value of keeping a Fire Giant this slow, this long. There's only 30 seconds left in the buff.
There is. Pyromancer should be just about the last that the Tartarus Titans are able to take, and they are able to narrowly. Thought maybe Wrong You had a bit more steal potential than he did. So the Tartarus Titans able to take out, I believe, 2 Tier 1s and 1 Tier 2 tower with their Fire Giant power play, which will swing gold largely in their favor, making it easier to look towards subsequent Fire Giants, or even potentially the Gold Fury, as that will be respawning very shortly. The Leviathans are showing presence, so that means they've got the timer and could potentially take it for themselves. Dangerous play, though. Last time we saw the Leviathans take a Gold Fury, didn't go so well afterward.
Yeah, the after the fact wasn't very clean. Luckily for them, they've still got the burn. But do they have the time? This looks like a repeat. There's the Sanctified Field. The lights are up.
Just takes it.
The Titans walk up and just scoop it away. And what was earlier a few thousand gold for the Leviathans, now 4,000 in favor of the Titans. And it might continue that route. Hardcore jumps forward. They're looking for more of a fight. Kleena's in the wall, just waiting. The Leviathans aren't able to find what they were looking for, and the Titans get to back away and set up for the Fire Giant in 30 seconds.
Surprised the Titans allowed the Leviathans to get as aggressive as they just did. Yarkor leaps in, doesn't connect with the stun onto anybody. You've got eyes on Panatom in mid. Just gotta think the abduct from Aurora was down. Should have at least been able to force out the beads from the Bologna had it been up. But the Tartarus Titans said use Sanctified Field. They'd use their blind from Cyclone Spin, so we're not willing to stick in their heels and take the fight, because why would you? The objective already went down, and Fire Giant had not spawned as of yet. No longer true. By the time this sentence is over, Fire Giant will have barreled its way back towards the Earth, and the Leviathans will have to answer a difficult question on whether or not you want to defend in neutral or in an advantage state in your own base. Seems like neutral territory is the answer. The Leviathans like their odds, and the Tartarus Titans don't love their odds enough to stick around. Vision control in the Fire Giant pit will belong to the reigning world champions. But you got to think the Tartarus Titans, they've got the shred potential. They've got pretty decent confirmation. Those ultimates are coming back up. I think it's up to Wrong You to find just a pristine pull into a stinger from Shinto. That's the win condition.
Well, you need something here. Titans get the FG. Will they get the fight afterward? Panatom finds himself right in the middle. There's going to be the shred from the Nemesis. The leap away is only going to get you so far. One more hit is all it needs, but Layers unable to find it. Hardcore surrounded and Hardcore taken down. The Titans still at least get one. Now Shinto in an odd spot takes some poke from Solar Troll, and there's the blink forward. Layers once more, and he's on the chase. One more hit, and that's the kill, and now they're looking for anything and everything they can find. 3 down on the Leviathans. Panatom, barely any health to work with, and the Titans finally have themselves an advantage.
Look, I understand the idea from the Leviathans. Those base defenses weren't going exactly great. Sure, they had slowed down with the Tartarus Titans, but that's all they did on the last base defense. They stopped a Tier 2 from going down, but that's because the Tartarus Titans decided to commit elsewhere on the map. So instead, the Leviathans try their best to make something happen in the neutral territory at, well, a major cost.
Well, this Titan, it's tanky now. Zap is here. Panatom just now backing. No ults to their name. The Titan is falling, but they are going to put up a fight. They get one, but they lose one in the process. The Titan goes down, and the Titans themselves stand supreme.
Yeah, the Leviathans came into this match with a composition that just would not be able to match up in the late game. Once the Tartarus Titans were allowed essentially 18 minutes to free farm with only 2,000 gold in the lead for the Leviathans, it felt pretty in hands of the Tartarus Titans. Well, once they had all that itemization and were allowed to group up around Fire Giant, around Gold Fury, every single team fight went their way. Had the Leviathans been able to push their lead a little bit more so in the early, I think this game becomes a lot more interesting, but 2,000 gold, 20 minutes in, just not enough.
Now, when they finally get the lead, it's too small for the time, right? 2,000, 10 minutes in. Feels pretty good for them. Maybe they're able to.
That's still not a
well,
lot.
they could like leverage it into something a little bit more, right? Put some elbow grease into it or something. But unfortunately for them, that's not the case here. They have at least one more shot to try and turn things around and keep things going. But the Titans lead 1-0 after game number 1. Will they shut it out in 2? We'll find out right after this.
to the Spring Masters event. Game number 1 is now done with the Tartarus Titans finding their victory. And this season of the SPL can be thanks to one of our good friends over at Alienware for returning to be a sponsor in Season 9 of the SPL. Make sure that you check out their social media at Alienware on both Instagram and Twitter, and go to alienwarearena.com to see all the cool things that they have available to you at home. All of our pros are playing on the Aurora Ryzen 10 desktop, so make sure you check those out, because they are some of the top-of-the-line PCs out there, and even some of the top-of-the-line laptops, like the ones that you see used over here on the desk. So make sure to give Alienware a follow and make sure to give them a look. Thank you one more time to Alienware for being a sponsor in Season 9 of the SPL. It's J-Mac. I got Trelly with me as we get ready to break down game number 1. A back-and-forth game to start at the very least there, and then when it came down to these team fights, these plays around the objective, especially once we start dipping to this 15-20 minute mark, it's where the Tartarus Titans are really starting to break out.
Yeah, it really seemed like just the team fight ultimates that the Tartarus Titans draft for themselves were a little bit too hard to deal with. Obviously, Sanctified Field and just the lights from X-Ball. Both of those things are going to be pretty disorienting when you are trying to team fight around them, and it was a good 5v5 draft. Obviously, the Chernobog was banned away from SOT, but he's still allowed to hide in the walls with Kleena. Both of these picks were very successful for him, and the whole team just looked real good together after these team fights.
Yeah, once the Titans were finally able to rally together, all kind of group up around these objectives, that's when we really start to see the strengths of those two big team fighting ults between that Darkest Night Spelunky and then the Sanctified Field, like you highlighted as well, with that Ola run. And not really going to say that, the Spelunky did a whole lot different than any other normal hunter necessarily. Cyclone just kind of doing what Cyclone does best, and that's playing things that we don't get to see very often and just making them work.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you have consistent auto-attack damage and you're able to help out your team in that fight, I don't see a problem with it. And that X-Ball ult is one of those things that you can't really tell how much it did until, unless you, listen into the comms, something like that, right? You can just see that it disorients the team in the team fight, and obviously, paired with the rest of the squad playing pristinely, you're going to have a good time. Obviously, Aurora always on point on the Khepri, that sort of thing, having some clutch reses there as the game went on. Only 3 total kills, but there could have been a little bit more if Aurora wasn't playing as on point as he was. And of course, Lairs was facilitating as well in this now. So just highlight to the whole team, obviously, because they haven't been able to take a set off the Leviathans yet. This is only game 1. They came out swinging. They still need one more to clean it, but it's a good look thus far.
Yeah, making sure to at least get game 1 under their footing is definitely a step in the right direction for the Titans, because they've had difficulty in the past even being able to take a single game off the Leviathan. So maybe a big shout to SOT on this cleanup, really still showcasing just how dangerous and how dominant this god is over in that solo lane role, topping the damage charts by a good 6,000-7,000 plus over the next person in the entire lobby there. So SOT, in some matches, in some games, teams have put a lot of focus on making sure to keep him down. We see him go, sometimes he'll go 2-5, and then all of a sudden you look at the rest of the board, and Cyclone Spin's popping off, Paul's popping off. And sometimes SOT can have his fun moments. We'll see if he gets to have one in game number 2. Picks and bans between the Leviathans and Titans are ready to go. And I don't imagine that cleanup will make it to a 10th ban this time around, or 10th pick.
Yeah, we'll have to see. The Leviathans have to try and shut something down here. It could be the Oleron, obviously the Chernobog and the Mercury. They're just going to be salty run-back bans, if you will. Something has to change here. The Titans are just going to answer back with the Ymir and the Yemoja, so nothing else has changed in that regard. This is where we might see some no adaptations here. I mean, obviously in the bans, they could pick something different, but no adaptations in the bans. The Leviathans not too stressed about, what just happened. The Jingwei also. So pretty much the same. And no, this is exactly the same. The AMC is going to be the first pick once again. So the Levi's weren't too worried about that last game. I think maybe they realized what went wrong, and it certainly wasn't in the mid lane. They weren't worried too much about their pressure, so they're just going to get that AMC.
Get the AMC, but they're going to give the Khepri back up to the Titans. This could be an easy Nemesis lock-in if they decide to go for it on the side of the Titans. And with the performance that they had last time around, I wouldn't be surprised if the Titans just snap lock those two in. No reason for the Titans to change any of their draft. I mean, it worked. It took a little while to get there, but it worked. The question for the Leviathans is what changes they make. Kleena is open. Chernobog obviously taken away, but they could grab the Kleena, give that one over to Yarkor, give him something where he can be aggressive in that lane.
Or we could see I don't know how many times this has ever happened. I think Gore shared the statistic once. We could see the full 100% run back.
Very rare.
Yeah, I know it's very rare.
We see one team do it every so often, but I think it's less than I don't think you can even count it on one full hand.
Well, so far so good. Depending on if anything is going to be banned away in the second half of bans, we'll have to see. But so far, this is exactly what we saw last game. Leviathans have not made any adaptations to their draft just yet. Unless, of course, that could be an AMC for Zapman, for example. But I just don't think that's going to be the option. All right, well, my fun has been ruined, and we are going to see King Arthur, and that has never gone anywhere but the solo lane as far as I'm concerned in this matchup specifically. So we are going to see our core on this King Arthur. That's going to bring a little bit of a different dynamic to that solo lane, and the Titans, they're still sticking to their guns.
Look, if it ain't broke, you don't have any reason to need to fix it out here. Olaron for Paul, a 4th time now, I believe, today, that he's been able to lock this mage in and bring some pressure and some success over towards that mid lane. Titans now, as they jump into the bans, have a lot of things to think about. Kleena is still up, and I would not be surprised if the Leviathans maybe flex a ban over to take that god away. That assassin has been running the solo lane this entire event.
Yeah, we'll have to see if the Leviathans do want to ban the Shivalanke away, because they don't want to deal with the Darkness of Nights, as you mentioned. That could be an option as well, but the Kleena was taken away. So the Leviathans do not want to deal with that. They don't want to deal with any damage from the walls. Chernobog is also taken away, so both of those are not going to be on the table. SOT is going to have to give us something new. Most notably, the Baron is open if that is going to be the option, so there is something to do there. But they're going to hold on just a little bit longer. Hachiman will be taken away as well, so trying to limit some of the safety in that duo lane, as well as Artemis, so some of the hard carry potential from that duo lane. And it looks like Leviathans are just going to throw Rama in there as well, so diving really deep into the ADC god pool is going to be both of these duo lane hunters, as the Tartarus Titans now have their option. Do they want to take Cyclone Spin's pick here, or are they just going to grab something for SOT? And to be honest, no matter what we see here, it could be either.
I mean, with the Hachiman, Artemis, and Rom all taken away alongside that Chernobog, we are going to dig a little bit deeper. Heimdall notably still available. It's been a hunter that a lot of these teams have kind of been flexing over towards if they want to, but Titans don't need to change that up. They can just keep it the same. So the only god that's going to change on the Titans draft this time around will be what goes over to SOT in the solo lane. Leviathans, now with a couple of picks themselves, likely still need to grab Zapman's pick, as this AMC has been flexed more often towards Shinto with an Odin Hover. How do you feel about that pick into the comp that the Titans already have?
I mean, the comp isn't the issue. That's got to be Odin support, I would have to imagine. And every single person on the Titans are not going to be wanting to get trapped in the Odin cage. The question is, are you considering the fact that they can break it very quickly with all these auto attackers? And I think they will make the pivot because of that realization. They just have so much to just, if everyone auto attacks at once and then someone with auto attack speed autos it twice, you're pretty much broken out of there immediately. Phantom Shell is also a thing. So the pivot into the Fafnir and then Charybdis, which is still a very safe ADC that has still been available here. They're going to hover that as well. I think this would be a very solid lock-in here. I don't see too many reasons why Fafnir isn't a great choice. You have so many auto attackers. You have a good amount of CC, a good amount of setup, a good amount of peel. I think it would be a very safe option here, but not wanting to deal with the amount of CC that Khepri brings in the Sanctified Field could be why this is a little bit of a hover.
And Charybdis really would be able to allow Zapman to kind of be a pseudo lightning rod for his team. Back when this god first became available for competitive play, Zapman was the first one to break this Charybdis out towards the duo lane, and Zapman was able to delay 10, 12 seconds between just the Whirlpool form, Purification Beads, Aegis, and his ultimate. He's able to buy so much time, and his team was able to fall back in and collapse on. And it will be Fafnir Charybdis over towards potentially that dual lane. We have seen Charybdis go mid, most often in the hands of players like Baronic on the Solar Scarabs, but still a little bit of flexibility for this Leviathan's draft. To round things out will be a completely different look for SOT. Amaterasu, the final god.
I can't believe it. This is just a normal solo laner.
Baron was up. Hold on a second.
I mean, yeah, they could have done the Baron, obviously, but another auto attacker, great for... They're going to go through objectives so quickly with this draft. They have the Amaterasu passive. They have Shivalanke, Olaron, and Nemesis, and then they just have so much protection shred as well with the Khepri and the Nem. This is a great draft from the Tartarus Titans. They've essentially just added another huge team fight ultimate with the Dazzling Offensive. They still have the Olaron X-Ball run back. The only thing you have to deal with on the flip side is the amount of shred the Leviathans are also bringing with triple auto attackers, being Baka, Charybdis, and AMC, and then Coerce from Fafnir. So if we're looking at just damage output, both of these teams have a whole hell of a lot, but the burst is not going to be your biggest deal. I think the biggest confirm on the map I'm looking at the moment is probably just the Stinger from AMC.
So we do recognize that both these teams have drafted more towards that objective play with not only all the auto attacks, but all the extra buffs that can come there. Things like Frenzy potentially could make its way back in here. Even Bracer we've seen kind of pop itself in time and time again. But when it comes away from that objective, once all of that burn has been thrown towards it, once all of these abilities and relics have been dropped for those, how does the team fight after look for these two teams, Strelly?
Yeah, I have to give the team fight once again to the Titans. It's any team that has Darkest of Nights and the Sanctified Fields from All Around is going to have a very easy time just grouping up around these objectives and saying, whenever we drop these, we win. You have to leave. You can't fight into this. You're going to get relics, or they have to disengage. The Leviathans, though, are able, once again, to try and bait it out. They can go in and say, hey, we're on the objective, I swear. Here come the ultimates. We back off, and then we go for the re-engage. And at that point, they have a lot of great potential to chase down as well. AMC is going to be extremely quick. Baka has no problem running to someone down in a fight. And I think King Arthur is going to be difficult to deal with. Not too much CC to lock him down unless you're using a Khepri Abduct, something like that. So I think both of these teams have a great time if they wanted to go for these 5v5s, but the team fight specifically has got to go to the Titans once again.
The Atlantis Leviathans are definitely have to play maybe to their strengths a little bit earlier on through this Bakasura, try and see if they can find anything and bring this to a Game 3. Can the Leviathans do it, or will the Titans finally find their win over their opponents? Let's find out in Game 2.
Now, this one's going to be a fun one. Mifflin, tell me if you've heard this before. You've got a team on one side.
Uh-huh.
The Leviathans. Yeah, okay, good. I'm glad you heard that one. What about 4 physical? It's picked up for the Leviathans
God,
with the only magical damage being the front line. Feels like, and I can already see the start for it, Aurora, maybe the easiest sovereignty choice as a support of his life.
This time, the Leviathans have got one slight difference, a delineation between two compositions that I think will actually make an impact. Beforehand, it was like, Shinto Stinger, we're going to kill that guy. If I don't pick up the Stinger, that's the only guy we're killing because we need that defense shred. At least this time, you've got Charybdis on your team.
Yeah.
Zatman going to be able to shred defense with that second ability. I believe it's called Capsize, but I'm not Trelly Relly. I can't tell you the name of every ability in Smite. But I will tell you that it does shred defense, and it does a whole lot of damage, and should help out a fair bit. So I think the Leviathans are still in a similar position in that you don't want to be going to a hyper late game position when you are quad physical stacked, even if you do have options to deal with it. Because, I mean, second ability on Charybdis only up like every 12 seconds, I believe. Stinger is an ultimate that if you miss it, you're just not connecting, and on a pretty long cooldown as well. So, second verse, same as the first. Leviathans would love to put the Tartarus Titans in a hearse, but quickly.
That was good. I want you to know, I fully acknowledge that was really good. It's not often that you get to hear hearse used ever, so realistically, getting to drop it in conversation is great. A roar with a little bit of a pull. On to Wrong You. He's who I was going to talk to you about because we've been seeing a lot of auto attackers the last couple of weeks. And I feel like it was only a matter of time, but I'll give credit where credit's due. J-Mac mentioned it earlier on Waiting Room. Until we finally got to see this Fafnir. But is the Coerce, especially the team-wide Coerce buff, enough that the Leviathans, even in like a late-game fight, can balance things out? It feels like such a weird like Smite calculus that you have to do to figure out if this is like enough to level the playing field for them in a late-game fight. But is this Coerce, is this Fafnir gonna make a big enough difference for them?
It will, especially around objectives, obviously.
Yeah.
That's Coerce's bread and butter. As long as Fafnir can group up on his ADCs and have
says,
them on
you
a
see
gold
the fire
period.
giant? Not anymore.
Yeah, hit that, and it's not moving, it's not dodging, so we're feeling pretty good about it. In a late-game team fight, getting multi-man Coerce, to find full value, you want to hit Shinto, Zatman, and Panatom. Whether or not that's going to be happening consistently, probably not. If it is happening consistently, that means your hunters are right on top of each other, which makes dives super easy for the Tartarus Titans.
Solar Troll's just like, yo, my dream!
Yeah, like, SOT's loving that for sure. Look, it's always difficult math. I think the Leviathans have got an opportunity to just run away with this game. Similarly to Game 1, but maybe even easier to perform on, to get in towards these objectives for the first 20 or so some odd minutes. But the conversation of ease of play in a team fight, it's just got to go to the Tartarus Titans. And I know these are the best players in the world. They're, all the armchair grandmasters on Reddit and in Twitch are saying, well, if you just hit everything, this composition's going to work.
That's such a huge if, though.
Yeah, if you're just hitting everything, yeah, of course it can work, but hitting everything against players that are just as good as you, pretty difficult. And these are the best players to play in the world. 10 of the best 40 players on the planet.
And also, like, quite literally, like, this is the 10 players that were in the World's
These are
Finals.
World's Finals. So having something that just makes it a little bit easier to perform is so
for Solar
important.
Troll.
Yeah, except for Sot.
So this
You
is
didn't have to
9.
do it to him.
This is 9 of the World's finalists. And Sot looked real damn good at Worlds, too. Whether or not he made it to the finals doesn't necessarily matter as much to me. I think this is going to be...
fine.
Yeah, honestly, it's pretty insane. I've never got 4th at Worlds.
I have. It didn't feel great.
But, like, compared to, like, 6th.
No,
it feels awesome.
Okay, you spit the word 6th out right there.
Yeah, it's because they're disgusting. They're not even real.
Those are actual humans, and they've got rights as well.
Yeah, no, they're and you know what? They're great players. Top 6 is insane.
That's right.
Top 10 is insane. Anything after that, there's too many numbers. Nobody cares anymore. Either way, this is going to be a matchup that it is, as you said, incredibly difficult for either of these squads to overcome. But definitely for the Leviathans, knowing that they've gone into a similar trapping as they did last time. King Arthur, though, is a change-up from the Bologna, slowing down one of the auto attackers, and already a different build. Has the Bluestone, makes a lot of sense for the starter. Went immediately into a Sovereignty as well over there, so he's building up some of this physical protection as well to help deal with layers and Sot.
Yeah, having the double physical, speaking of layers, it's some trouble. Yeah, he's out. Deja Vu, Sanctified Field.
Yeah, Paul says, hey, no, and the fight stops. Last time,
Exact same place.
Admittedly, it was on a roar that he saved him, but either way, turns out Olarunnel, pretty good. Thick cooldown, though, and that's going to be where things maybe hurt the most for the mid laner. If the Leviathans can get another play like that in the next, like, minute and a half,
They got time.
they have enough time to get a kill.
Yeah, they've got some opportunities, but still some resources they're going to have to burn through. Layers still has Blink, so if he's not in combat, we'll have another avenue of escape. Paul still has his beads available, and Aurora's ticked over to level 5 and has Scarab's Blessing. So it's going to be difficult for the Leviathans to find their pick. I really think this Leviathans draft is going to hit its stride at about the 12-minute mark. I'm being hyper-specific. Once you're 2 items deep into your build.
At 12:06.
Yeah, and I just want to see the Leviathans group up and force objectives.
Yeah.
Force the Tartarus Titans to fight into the Leviathans. If you're maintaining a defensive position, it is so difficult for Paul to find an impactful ultimate. Using Sanctified Field aggressively is nearly impossible. Use it on your feet when people are running at you. Well, they have to run through it. That's way easier.
Red buff being looked at. Aurora is alone in this endeavor right now, and he's unsuccessful in stealing it away, but it's still hanging around over there. Honestly, might be in a good spot. Layers blinks forward onto Shinto. Shinto, not a lot of mana, but does have a tower. And 6 minutes in, those tier 1s with the recent buffs, yeah, they are enough to thwart that push from the Titans, and instead of getting first blood, they fall back.
They do at least get the Heavenly Sprint off of Rongyu and the beads from Shinto, which is a pace that you're not happy to see if you're a Leviathans fan. You want the Leviathans to be the aggressor, to be the proactive component on the map right now. And the Tartarus Titans stripping both a defensive relic and what is a pinch hitter relic, can be defensive or offensive in Rongyu's Heavenly, is just really going to limit the Leviathans' ability to either finish off some of these kills and chase out, or commit themselves, namely Shinto, commit yourself to chasing out a kill.
Well, Paul locked down. There's the Sanctified Fields. And it seems like it's enough one more time to get him out. Rongyu, a huge leap forward.
That's
The
dangerous.
Stuns on the layers. Damage is going back. Aurora's rotated in. Panatom leaps forward. Scarab's Blessing keeps Paul safe. And now it's the chase down. Amaterasu looking for the stun. Finds it on a Panatom. The follow-up's there. But Solar Troll now
He's
surrounded
hurt.
by 4. And they're going to kill him down. The Stinger doing what it can. Aurora body blocked in. Scarab's Blessing down. All they need is some follow-up. And unfortunately, they're not going to have enough CC to find it. Still, first blood to the Leviathans.
SOT just diving a little bit too deep there, and that's that physical defense shred we were talking about a little bit earlier. Shinto lands Stinger, and SOT, had he built any more defense, has a little bit with Tower Shield, but had he built more, wouldn't have mattered because he would have had none of it regardless. So I think maybe correct in the SOT's mind to go towards Golden Blade in that first slot, maybe incorrect in diving as deep as he did up against Panatom. I was curious. I thought we'd see the Tartarus Titans commit specifically onto Rongyu, who leaps in aggressively and actually decides to early cancel his ultimate. Great decision, by the way. It allows him to get that secondary leap and escape a pretty sticky situation. But SOT, I suppose, just not catching the memo. Paul was too low HP to stick around. Scarab's Blessing had already been expended, and SOT dives deep on his own and dies on his own.
Trebuchet is going to spawn here. Left side for the Titans. That's maybe important. Zap, Wrong You hanging out over here. I thought we were going to see maybe a huge amount of aggression, maybe some dives into the jungle. Instead, it's just Wrong You kind of playing follow me with a roar. He's lined up with him. He's going back towards the jungle. Yeah, deep wards, but realistically, it's kind of calmed down overall. But SOT has made a big rotation that we've gotten to see. Unfortunately, it didn't go the way that they would have liked. But now, as time continues on, with the relics down on cooldown that they are, Paul about to have his ult back up, it feels like the culmination of another fight is just on the precipice. We'll just have to figure out where it is. Hardcore, Panatom, they're running deep. And the Leviathans want to fight, and the Titans just aren't giving it to them.
No, the Tartarus Titans have got zero onus on this portion of the game. It's up to the Leviathans to choose where fights happen and make sure they do in their favor. Because the Tartarus Titans, if they were allowed to, they'd hit the skip time button. You ever played like an Elder Scrolls or something? Just go ahead and pass time to that 30-minute mark. So yeah, we'll get there, have our gold spooling do the work for us. That is the game plan of the Tartarus Titans as of now. Whereas the Leviathans with this draft has decent scaling come late, just double hunter composition, but quad physical means that defense on the other side is going to start to add up. We're getting to that 10 or so minute mark when Pyromancer starts to become an option, which has very quickly become the main option for neutral objectives in the early. I really want to see the Leviathans keep up this pressure. We're in the exact same position as where we were in Game 1. The Leviathans, once we do take over that 10-minute mark, we'll have about 1,000 gold in the lead. That's exactly where we were. It's just how well you're able to leverage it, where you're able to force those fights. Surprised that SOT's got a 1-level lead over Yarkor after falling down for First Blood, but hasn't been splitting as much farm with his jungler, I suppose. I was going to say you probably want to fight around that Pyromancer, but with SOT having that lead, it's just so difficult for the Leviathans to find their positioning. Double Hunter, it means that if you can get over towards the Gold Fury, it'll shred pretty quick.
That's going to be the glory. Plus, you got to coerce. I mean, forget about it. It's going to be a lot, but can you get out alive of the other engagements? Cyclone's been shut off the lights. They did get a Regurgitate in response. Layers dropped their ult as well, though, so 2 for 1 in the trade on the right side of the mid lane. And now we're starting to see a couple of players dance around the Pyromancer, starting it up. Yeah, Wrong You's gonna hit it. Someone's gonna hit it. Maybe not. No, they're looking for the fight a little deeper. They're gonna let that one come to rest. And ultimately, it's just the solo laners that are boxing back and forth. Aurora keeping an eye on the Pyromancer to make sure it doesn't slip away, but the Titans just make sure the Leviathans can't pull ahead.
I love the play that we just saw from Layers, though. Panatom jumps over the wall, thinks to himself, okay, nothing's going to come of it. I'm going to get these camps. I'm going to go back into the team fight. But Layers says, okay, well, if I blink over the wall and I ult him, I'm not winning the fight. Panatom's going to escape with his life regardless, but it's going to at least cost Panatom his ultimate.
Yeah.
So it's a stall play from the Tartarus Titans, which fits their play style incredibly well. Layers, by getting aggressive onto Panatom, essentially buys a minute for Paul, where Paul doesn't need to worry about Panatom. And these minutes start to add up slowly throughout the duration of this game. That's massive. The Tartarus Titans, and specifically Layers, make it a play to extend the match.
Layers, unfortunately, surrounded, stunned down, but there's the Scarab's Blessing. The movement speed going to be enough to get him out of there. Sanctified Fields, dropped and surrounded. Panatom, Shinto all low, and Solar Troll has made the rotation in. One more hit is all it takes to kill off the jungler
he's got another one.
The Leviathans, and now he's looking for more. The mid laner, 1 auto, 1 kill, and it's 2 more for SOT. Zap's low, Zap's gone at this point. It's just a matter of time. It's going to be Aurora, question mark, who gets him no ball with the rotation around, and that's a 3-man swing for the Titans.
And the Titans can now back up to that Gold Fury and take it for themselves. Yeah, Wrong You, Yarkor, you guys are healthy. You don't have enough damage for the Pyromancer, so it should be a neutral objective that goes unreturned by the Leviathans. And that's a byproduct of the Leviathans feeling the pressure of this Tartarus Titans draft. The Levi's of old, with a standard composition, are never making that play. They are never getting aggressive in the jungle right there in essentially what was a neutral state, because there's no reason to unless you're forced to make plays in the early game, unless you know that your composition can't line up at the 30-minute mark from even. So the Leviathans say, we can't. We don't have the composition for that. We have to make the play now. If you find that pick on the Layers, it's the Leviathans taking Gold Fury, or at least forcing a fight where the Tartarus Titans have to work their way in aggressively. But because Layers survives, thanks to phenomenal peel from Aurora, it just baits the Leviathans to an incredibly poor position, allows SOT to make a pretty wacky rotation over there. I guarantee you not a single member of the Leviathans are even imagining SOT as an asset to the Tartarus Titans in that team fight. Like, there's no way the Soul Laner's available, but he was. And the Tartarus Titans make a massive swing in the early.
They get that Fury, they get a Pyromancer afterward, they get 3 kills on top of that, so they lose the first blood early on, and that's about all that they've lost at this point. I guess also technically the health on the tier 1 in right lane, it's not looking too great. Trebuchet finally pushed up over here on left. We haven't yet had a respawn for these obelisks. So this is going to be where maybe some of the push pressure can be, and they seem to want more. The Titans getting aggressive onto the duo lane. Aurora and Cyclone are here. Rongyu's going to help peel a little bit. But look at Paul, look at Layers. They're coming in and making for some sort of rotation. It's just whether or not they can get to the tower line. The Trebuchet is putting in its work, hurling these projectiles and chunking the tower. King Arthur sitting in the jungle. Either something crazy is about to happen between these two teams or nothing's going to happen. It looks like something is going to start up. Paul taken up into the skies, but there's the Sanctified Fields, and the damage seems to be too good onto Hardcore, and Paul is able to get the kill. Transformation from Rongyu, but it's just to get the leap. It's just to try and escape. There's the Coerce, but is it enough for them to get away? One more hit, and Sot picks up a 3rd kill.
The Tartarus Titans playing with their lead now, group up around the Trebuchet just to take down a Tier 1 tower, which is incredibly valuable nowadays, and 9-5 Tier 1s really can slow down your Fire Giant sieges. And the Tartarus Titans are still hovering nearby, 4 strong. Layers going over towards mid. They want this Tier 2.
And it's going to be able to do some damage. You can see the chunks that are going to come through. They've got the minions as well. Backdoor protection's gone. This Tier 2 is going to get erased. The Titans running the left side of the map. No Fury available for him to strip away. They're going to let those minions and that Trebuchet do its own thing for a little while. No Pyromancer available, Mifflin. That might have been the biggest power play they could have made.
Yeah, that is massive for the Tartarus Titans, who have exposed a bird so early on, who have got a composition that is only going to continually get stronger, with nearly 5,000 gold in the lead, closer to 4 for the Tartarus Titans. Experience gap favoring them as well. The Leviathans have got avenues back in. It's the exact same playstyle I was talking about earlier, where the Leviathans could just group up on one of these neutral objectives and force the Tartarus Titans to answer the question. That's one way. It's a lot harder to do now. The Tartarus Titans are going to be fighting in with a lead now. Had the Leviathans been able to do so a little bit sooner, maybe it favors them more, but double Hunter composition with a Fafnir is always going to shred objectives, even though it's a non-standard build from Shinto, and you've barely got any crit for Zapman. I've talked myself out of it. The Leviathans, they've got to wait for the Tartarus Titans to get aggressive again, and I think the only thing that makes the Tartarus Titans get aggressive are these neutral objectives. And if you allow Paul to set up defensively, it is so hard to take any objective away from a team that has Sanctified Fields.
All right, so here's the play. And let me tell you, or let me find out if this is something that can even work. Right now, the answer feels to be a very loud, resounding no. But can you force a Sanctified Fields and not immediately lose the fight, get away enough, and then re-engage? They're going to try to engage here. Tier 1 tower in mid is where the Titans have been throwing their damage. Again, not a lot of healing, but still a little bit going in their favor. And they're stepping forward. Panatom on the left side of the lane. All 5 members of both teams keeping their eyes on each other. Not going deep for the fight. Layers maybe breaking off too far here. Could get caught out in the red buff. Worst case scenario, they're stealing a red buff, and that's exactly what it looks like they're going to go for. But that's the go button, double dash from the Nemesis. There's the Sanctified Fields, and now they're just pulling them in. Hardcore had nothing to say in this fight. They just take him out, and Rongyu is the next target. Your front line's gone, and your carry's squishy. Panatom able to find one and gets rid of Paul. Titans are all low. This could be the turnaround they need. Zapman is pushing forward, but the damage is just as much in retaliation. Shinto goes down, and Layers dashes forward. Zapman with the Aegis, and he stays alive, but only for a little bit longer. Everyone but Panatom gone.
Panatom's up and back, has decent damage, but not enough damage. Poison gonna remove him from the map. A great silence from SOT to make sure that leap doesn't get him over the wall. And again, the Leviathans with one play find one bit of a silver lining. They take out Paul. To answer your question, by the way, can the Leviathans force Sanctified Field and not immediately die?
No.
No, distinct no in that one.
Like very loud. I think I still hear it
It's echoing. Yeah, that is a resounding no. But I still like the call from the Leviathans, despite getting crushed, to continue the aggression. I think it's a call from Zapman where he just realizes, hey, if we can't get more kills here, I'm not sure when this opportunity is going to come up again.
Well, Hardcore tries to be a presence for the team here, but it's not going to be enough. Rung Yu walking forward.
He has to.
At this point, yeah, you almost have to. Unfortunately, not going to be able to do anything here. Fire Giant over to the Titans. 10 kills to 2.
He's done.
And 6,000 gold. They're going to push that even further. Rung Yu in the grave for 30 seconds. And honestly, they probably would have continued that push to a tier 2 if it weren't for the tier 1 still standing in the lane. So a little bit of work to do for the Titans to get to the birds again. But Mifflin, they've got plenty of room to work with.
Gore, I'm going to strain my brain to its absolute limit,
All right,
trying
I
to
can
find the win
the
condition
bulging.
for the Leviathans. First step, get Panatom out alive. And he juked back into SOT. I thought he was going to lose his life there. Shinto and Zapman should be able to peel out. Here's that ease of play. Rearing its head, by the way. Shinto and Zapman have enough damage to kill SOT.
Yeah.
But SOT is fast, and those are both single-target hunters. They don't got it.
Yeah, he just bobs and weaves. Most of the autos not connecting. Hardcore, by the way, gone one more time. Guess what? So is the right-hand Phoenix. The Titans are on a tear right now.
Why'd he stop?
And again, the only thing that stops the mid lane from falling shortly thereafter is the towers still standing. Mifflin, you want to talk about a lot of gold that's going into the pockets and lining the Titans up for more money? Well, they've got, well, only 2 more, but still, more towers. 2,000 gold on the map for them to pick up. And they just backed and did a lot of spending.
That's basic economics. You're learning it in your Smite match. Gold begets gold, and that translates to money begets money. And the Tartarus Titans have got money and will continue to accumulate it, it would seem. I was going to say the Leviathan's win condition is just grouping up as 5 on their Phoenix and shredding the first person who walks through. But that win condition is slowly fading away as they keep getting caught out.
I mean, now the chase is on. There's a great ult from Layers, and they're looking for Shinto, going for a little more. There's the stun, and he's just gone. Left side Phoenix, oh yeah, exposed from the 15-minute mark. And so they're going to be able to get aggressive. Hardcore taken down, and with 2 members of the Leviathans gone, and one of them on the other side of the planet, it's going to be an easy left side Phoenix 3v5 plus the Titan. Helps balance things out a little bit here, but Rong Yu zap, they take too much damage, and the burn is on. The Titans looking for their revenge against the Leviathans. It was 3-0 in the finals one way. Now they're trying their best to keep it going, but this 3 is strong for the Leviathans. And they've managed to push them away just enough. Only half health on the Titan.
That's 9-5, keeping the Leviathan's dream alive for just another moment. 1 tier 2 tower, I suppose enough defense over to the Titan to keep the Tartarus Titans at bay, but still a minute left on this Fire Giant power play. That tier 2 and mid probably won't be there for a whole lot longer. Both side lane Phoenixes having been removed means that the Tartarus Titan's going to have a pretty easy time, and that's before I'd even realized the Trebuchet will be helping out in mid as well. The Leviathan's win condition, though, that we had hypothesized is still available. Group up as 5 and play on your only remaining Phoenix. Could help you out a fair bit. I'm looking at the builds for the Leviathans. I think Emperor's Armor should probably get built pretty soon. Legitimately, no BM, no disrespect.
Yeah, okay.
I think if Rong Yu were to sell his entire build, pick up an Emperor's Armor, and just sit behind his Phoenix, we might find a little bit more value from Rong Yu at this point, because he's not allowed to initiate, and you still got Coerce.
And you're getting pretty much murdered the minute you get into these fights. Solar Troll, they're taking a lot of damage. Finally, Panatom showing some fangs. And the bite is strong, but not enough to get a kill. They force Sot to fall back. Fire Giant buff, some inherent healing from Ama will be helpful. But you had called it earlier. Trebuchet over there in mid, it helps take down the tier 2. And Sot's playing with their food.
Healing.
He is just keeping Panatom engaged, making it a little easier around this Phoenix. Again, Trebuchet is going to be launching from outside the Phoenix mark. You have to get aggressive here if you are the Leviathans, or else this is just going to knock it down. It's going to take a while, but it will do it.
It will, and it's pretty hard to fight into that trebuchet as of now. No traditional mage means you've got no traditional way to keep these waves out. Damage from a range is sinking through, but the Tartarus Titans, they pushed in.
And there's going to be the go button. Lights out for the Leviathans. They're not going to find a kill just yet. The Phoenix is the target, and the Phoenix is gone. 3 birds down, and fire minion waves coming in on right and left. Left side is going to be getting some work done. Everybody bolsters defenses on the right. With FG coming back up, the Leviathans have too much to worry about to even leave the base.
Yeah, I'm not certain that the Leviathans can defend the base against a Fire Giant 5 stack. Well, I mean, 2 versus 5 doesn't look much better. Rongyu on the retreat. He's got SOT on his heels.
Yeah, you gotta be careful here. The Phoenix did respawn, so you've got a technical 6th man on the field, but is it going to be enough damage on the Cyclone Spin? Barely there. And now damage is good in retaliation. Sanctified Fields help lock down 1, and Hardcore is just trying to run away. The Titan's already low. They've got minions coming in. Layers with a huge loop around is looking to pick up anybody who's straggling back to the fountain. You're not gonna get there safely, and they're gonna continue picking them up. It's a 2-0 win here for the Titans as they run it down and take out the Leviathans.
The Leviathans just did not seem to grasp 9-5 nearly as quickly as the Tartarus Titans, who came into today with a plan. Late game scaling compositions and relatively passive early game play seems to have suited them incredibly well. The Tartarus Titans, they look happy, and Layers letting everybody know they did a good job.
I can never get over Paul. Like, everybody else in that room feels like pretty hyped up. You see Layers, he's standing up. Aurora's got a smile. Like, you can see the veterans almost immediately, though. Paul's just like, yeah, I was playing Smite, man. That was pretty cool. I got to play Olorun.
Spoilers for the interview, man.
Yeah, right. So the post-game interview from Paul. I don't know, man. I ulted.
And people died,
and we won,
in my ult.
But they do it, and they look good doing it, right? And you know what? If he's just gaming, he's gaming damn well.
That's scary.
Now they get to move forward. They have secured themselves a spot on Saturday. Congratulations to the Titan. We're going to break that one down, though, over there on the desk.
The Tartarus Titans are finally able to find a win up against their kryptonite in the Atlantis Leviathans. It took them almost 6 months to do it since the last time that they faced off against each other. But this is a convincing win, to say the least, Charlie. One of our fastest games that we have seen this weekend.
Yeah, their comp looked really annoying to deal with, and it seemed like whatever they slotted into that soul lane spot was going to look decent, but that Amaterasu for me was... I mean, it was just setting up so much. It was able to outbox pretty much everyone. SOT was a menace, and, you know, not only that, Cyclone Spin was top of the damage charts, even on this Xbalanque, which was doing so much. And then, as Mifflin touched on during the cast, anytime Paul dropped Sanctified Fields, it just seemed like someone was dying. More often than not, the majority of the Leviathans were also going to die.
Yeah, the Tartarus Titans really rallying together in this set, able to find their win over against the Leviathans. That puts them into their next day of play. That one won't immediately come tomorrow. That one will be a couple days away. We'll get into all the brackets and breakdowns of how everything is going to continue on beyond here. But Paul on this Olorun looked really good. It's something that we kind of questioned the first time that he brought it out at the start of the day. And now we're really starting to see the value of this pick.
Yeah, I just think the team fight ultimate that the Tartarus Titans drafted worked out so well. As long as they played around each other, as long as they didn't let anyone get picked and just, you know, focus on these 5v5 objective fights, the Ama was going to be able to wrap around and get to the back line more often than not. The double ultimates from the Sanctified Fields and the Darkest of Nights was able to just completely disorient the Leviathans, and despite the fact that they had a good team fight in their own right, they couldn't they couldn't do what they wanted to. They had to fight the way the Titans forced them to fight.
And not just that, you know, you were talking about SOT earlier, and as we see the highlights come through, I mean, SOT is literally just running into 4 or 5 people by himself, distracting, and then also keeping other individual or 2 members at a time distracted. At one point, when there's a siege happening on the right side of the map, SOT is keeping both of the Leviathans hunters busy. Shinto and Zapman were so distracted by this Ama just pushing themselves up in the left lane that they completely couldn't get back to defend against right. And then he did it again, you know, talking against the 1v1 up against Panatom, where he almost dies. And then SOT heals himself back up, walks back, and Panatom says, hey, I'm still here. You still got to pay attention to me. Keeps him busy yet again, and is able to really buy so much space for his team.
Yeah, and a solid 40,000 damage mitigated. It's obviously okay to look at the damage done and be like, wow, that Ama was doing things, but also soaking up a lot of damage, being essentially a meat shield for your team, is also going to go a long way.
Yeah, it's a big win for the Tartarus Titans, and we've got the man himself, SOT, standing by for our post-game interview, so we're going to talk a little bit to him. First off, congrats on a big 2-0 victory and moving on to next day of play. How does it feel for the team finally being able to take down the Leviathans who have given you so much trouble in the past?
I mean, it feels pretty good. I mean, I kind of expected Leviathans kind of to probably progress all the way through. I thought we'd probably play Kings again, but I mean, they're both. I mean, all the teams in this group are very, very good, so it's kind of hard to say. I mean, I just like Leviathans a lot. I think they're great players, so it definitely does feel amazing to get the 2-0 over them.
Yeah, I mean, coming up through the seeding tournament up until now, you guys come in really as this 4th seed, now to take down the 6th, and you move on alongside the Camelot Kings. Were there maybe any surprises in this group that you and the Kings were the 2 teams to move on?
I mean, it's hard to say because I kind of would expect there are no surprises in this group. It's like if Oni's and us were to move in, or Kings and us, or Leviathans and us, I mean, it's not really a surprise anyway because it's kind of the group of death, I guess. But I mean, there's never really any surprises, honestly.
Yeah, well, you guys look good in your set today. Congratulations on your win. I'll let you get back with the team to celebrate and get ready for y'all's next set in a couple of days.
Thank you.
I think it's a very important piece to pull there. It said that there's really no surprises in this team. I mean, this is the group made up of the 3rd through 6th place teams that were all within like 1 to 2 sets of each other all throughout the regular season of play. Now coming into here with a new meta shakeup, you never know what happens. We'll take a look, though, at the bracket and the schedule. That way you guys can see what all happened today and then what we still have to expect for tomorrow's sets, because this is day 1 of week 2, and there's still 3 more days to come. Our 2 teams to advance out of today's group is going to be the Camelot Kings and the Tartarus Titans. Kings able to do it in just their 3 games, just their 2 sets. Tartarus Titans took a little bit longer to get there, but were able to find their victory, taking down the Oni Homies. Tomorrow, you're not going to want to miss out, as we've got the SCC team that made it all the way through their bracket to get here, and the Valhalla Valkyries squaring off against the number 1 and 2 seeds of the SPL, the Jade Dragons and the Olympus Bolts. Should be a very fun set of games to watch tomorrow, Trelly.
Yeah, we're going to have to see if the Eldritch Hounds are able to pick anything up on watching these games. Obviously, they haven't been able to face too many of these SPL teams going into this. They were able to take down the Scarabs, but now they're seeing a little bit more how these pros are going to be adapting to this meta, that sort of thing. So hopefully they're at home watching, doing their homework and preparing for their match tomorrow up against the Jade Dragons.
Yeah, I know a lot of the guys on the Hounds have been waiting for their chance to fight against some of those top teams, getting a chance to, well, originally Dude Man said he wanted to take down 3-time. Unfortunately, he's not going to get that opportunity to maybe fight against the 3-time, but first they got to be able to make it through the Jade Dragons. That's all going to be happening tomorrow at 11 a.m., so make sure that you're tuning in here on behalf of myself, Trelly Production, everybody else behind the scenes. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you for day 2.